welcome back. So next up, we have a round table on a topic that might be very close to the hearts of many of you, and that's engaging patients in their clinical trials. So to host this panel, please welcome the CEO at Bioxidus, Marc Deschamps.
Thank you very much. Engaging patients actually in clinical trials, but in rare disease. Bioxidus is a company developing hopefully a new solution, new for patients affected also by a rare disease. However, it is in intracerebral hemorrhage or in hemorrhagic stroke, so I have no chance, hopefully, by the way, to involve patients in our clinical development. But that's a personal case here, and I would like you to welcome all the participants of the panel and ask them to introduce themselves first.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this invitation. My name is Jean-Philippe Lançon. I am the Vice President of the French Rare Disease Alliance, a national organization composed of 240 patient organizations in France. I'm a patient myself. I live with a rare disease for 25 years now, and I'm also the chair of a patient organization both in France and at the European level.
Good evening, everyone. My name is François Roch. I am the General Manager of Argenix for France. Argenix is a Belgium-based biology company who is developing and actually bringing to markets drug candidates who are focusing on autoimmune diseases and rare autoimmune diseases.
Thank you. My name is Karen Ayache-Pigné. I'm here with the hat Blue Daisy, which is a patient organization which recently took over a phase 3 program from a company that was getting into liquidation because of a shortage in financing in a rare disease known as Sanfilippo syndrome, which is a rare disease that my now deceased child was affected with. And since last week, I also have a new hat, which is the one of CEO of a gene therapy company based in Europe, which is GeneSpire, and so I have a sort of double perspective. And I also served on different patient organizations in the past, as well as on the pediatric committee of the European Medicines Agency when the pediatric regulation was initiated. I'm very glad to be with you today.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invite. I'm Nicolas Lévy. I am the head of medical and clinical development at Servier in neurology. As you know, I will not present Servier actually because Servier is the sponsor, so I suppose that you all know Servier. I'm very happy actually to have joined Servier because I spent most of my career, if not all of my career, before I joined Servier, about 35 years in the academic system, hospital, university, INSERM. I was the head of medical genetics department and the head of the INSERM research laboratory in Marseille, and I had created as well and directed the Foundation for Rare Diseases. Just to say that I dedicated my life, my entire life, professional life, to rare diseases, and really I'm dedicated to find options, and this is the reason why I left the academic public system, because I wanted to at least spend some time for the last part of my career to develop drugs to be efficient and to reach the patients.
Thank you very much for the organization, and good evening, everybody. So I am Andrea Ballerini. I'm a physician educated as a clinical pharmacologist. I worked in the past on rare disease and orphan disease, especially in pediatric setting. Now I'm working as an investor in Panake's Partner, where we are also focusing on potential investment in rare disease or orphan designation for products that need to reach the patients somehow.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you all. So as you can understand, we will have patient insight, we will have pharma insight, we will have biotech insight, and we will have also the investor insight. Alors, it seems obvious today and nowadays actually to involve patients in the development of new drugs, certainly when we speak about rare disease. Personally, I've worked many years in HIV. You don't develop any drugs in HIV without involving the patient association, and I can tell you it is very positive because it provides you with a lot of insight for your clinical development. So why actually engaging patients specifically for rare disease? Starting with you.
That's a good question. Why? Because I think it's actually, if you consider the number of patients, it's a very important question. In France, we are 3 million people living with a rare disease. At the European level, it's almost 30, 40 millions. Worldwide, it's more than 300 or 450 million people. It's a lot of people, I mean. So beyond that, as you know, maybe if you're familiar with rare disease, there is almost 6,000, between 6,000, 8,000 different rare diseases. But if you consider disease by disease, sometimes you can find few people affected by disease, sometimes 1 people, sometimes 10, sometimes 100, sometimes it can be much more. And beyond that, again, 95, sorry for the numbers, but I think it's important to better understand the landscape. 95% of people living with rare disease don't have any treatment. It means there is a huge place for innovation, and a lot of rare disease also are genetic. 80% of rare disease are genetic. Maybe you're around that. And just to finish with numbers, 70% of rare disease start in childhood. So if you consider this ecosystem and the need that we are expecting for the community of people living with rare disease, and there is a huge place for innovation, for clinical trials. What can I add? I can add that sometimes if you consider the small number of patients, and if you consider clinical trial in rare disease, it's very challenging to find eligible participants. So we need to better understand the ecosystem of the rare disease. To answer to your question, why is there any specificity for rare diseases? I think because of the number of patients, question of methodology specificities must also be addressed. Because once again, if we consider the actual methodological procedures, you can use them systematically for people living with rare disease. Because often of the number of the people affected by the disease we consider. And just maybe to finish, in rare disease, the patient care pathway is often complicated. Often the patient journey, the people that we need to be diagnosed, to have a diagnosis, to be treated, to have a follow-up is important. I mean, we need to be addressed to different clinicians, to different experts. So the pathway, the journey of for patients is very complicated. For this reason, I think the question of clinical trial and the question of specificity in rare disease must be addressed.
And François, Nicolas, you want to intervene?
I'm sorry, I don't want to
please,
take the word. If I may add just a point. We have to consider as well that most of rare diseases are ultra-rare diseases. Very few diseases correspond to a wide number of patients worldwide, but most of them are very, very rare. And it's almost impossible, even if in France we have created the expert centers, highly expert reference centers, it's not the same in all the countries. And so it makes it almost impossible for the physicians to know exactly what are the patient's needs. I'm speaking about patient's needs, not only medical needs. We all use the expression high unmet medical needs. I will prefer to speak about patient's needs, because patient's needs are very different in not only as the diseases are different, but also if you consider patients, adult patients, and children. And the patient's needs are much better known by the patients. So on the one hand, we need to know what are the patient's needs in terms of medical needs and quality of life and social interactions and whatever. And on the other hand, we need to make sure that we will consider in the clinical trials the right inclusion criteria, the right measures, outcome measures, and the right endpoints. And if you ask patients, parents, caregivers, researchers, physicians, what are the patient's needs, you will have different answers. But the answer we want to reply to is the patient's needs corresponding to the real patient's needs.
Yeah, very, very great point. So the patient, yeah, please.
No, of course.
Your words, perhaps.
But not at all. I fully support what you said. And I was going to say I could not agree more. And so that's true that the one who knows the best about his or her disease is the patient himself or herself or the family. And so, as Nicolas highlighted, if you don't have the needs, the exact needs of the patient in mind, you will very likely lose the target, because at the end of the day, you not only have to have your drug approved, you have your drug to be paid for. And no drug will be paid if there is no service for the patients themselves. And so that's extremely important to make sure that as a drug developer, you understand the disease very well in different dimensions. And it also helps you designing clinical studies that will address these needs of the patients. But you can also have partnering with patient organizations that will help you, not necessarily financially, even though that can be an option, but patient groups can also help in developing certain tools that you will use in your clinical studies, as I've done in the past. Like, for instance, we did develop an app that was being used at home by the families, the patients' families, so that beyond the visits done at the hospitals during the clinical study, there is also very important data captured on an everyday basis on things that were really critical for the families. And so it's extremely important to make sure that you have this engagement of patients or their families when the patients are, of course, unable children, so that you do not lose your target and you make the best choice in terms of clinical design. And when it's time to enroll for clinical studies, as Nicolas highlighted as well, you're better off being with patient organizations that will help you enroll the patients where they are. You will work with the key opinion leaders, of course, but also with the patient groups. And last but not least, and that's probably a sort of exception in the environment, but patient groups can also be very helpful when, because you are on an ultra-rare disease, there is less interest from the investment community. These patient groups can also help, and we shall not forget that a lot of programs in the R&D space were born because patient groups were also here to help and finance the beginnings.
Yeah, thank you. So definitely very important to understand the needs and the needs of the different stakeholders actually taking care of the patients. Certainly the patient-reported outcome, as you mentioned, and if the apps can help, it will be great. The design of the study, understanding also the healthcare system and what the payers are ready to pay, the same for the investors. But now, going to you, François, your company is specialized in rare disease. How do you deal with that internally?
So we believe that it is super important to engage with patients very early on. As Karen was mentioning, we have now the ability to collect data on what the actual burden of the disease is, but from the viewpoint of patients, okay? And we go way beyond just measuring a clinical trial endpoint. By doing so, we can collect data on what is the impact on ability to have a professional life or not, what is the impact on caregivers, and you need time to collect those data. Those data can be very helpful further down the road to discuss with payers. And innovation only matters if it reaches patients downstream. So by engaging very early, we give ourselves the ability to collect data in a structured way, using endpoints that are validated, even for data point like this, which gives us a lot of credibility once we are at the final stage of engaging with payers to find a way to get access, even in rare or super rare disease. So this is absolutely critical.
Thank you, François. And from an investor perspective, Andrea, you heard that there are rare disease, ultra rare disease. Yeah. Obviously, you are there to support the development, but to what extent?
I think most of the comments were already done by the other panelists, and we are all the same stakeholder. I mean, we are all aiming at the same goal, that is having drugs for patients that are approved, properly priced, at the end used. So as investor, we need to align, and we want to align also as a physician for the common purpose. So the idea is to engage early. If you don't engage early, you develop something that may be useless for patients, or they may be used just by a few patients and not priced properly. You may get wrong with the clinical trial, as Karen anticipated. And also it's important to have engagement of patients for potential non-dilutive funding that could help investment. But helping investor, as I said, we are all aiming at the same goals, so having something approved. So in that case, if we are aligned, it's just better if we get additional funding. Of course, for ultra-rare disease, it's very difficult to build up the case for a potential investment. Maybe sometimes it's probably also impossible with investment directly from private investor and not with the help of public investment. But for rare disease, it's possible to create a case. So this is one of the reasons I think engaging early is very important. Then another part that we should consider as investor is that more and more we are trying to follow the principle of ESG. And I think that following the ESG principle for rare or orphan disease is even more than in other fields, because in this case, if there is no investor putting the money in that, there will be no one in some cases.
Yeah, definitely. Societal impact is very important. So we speak about the why. I think it's time to speak about the how. Actually, how to engage the patient in this clinical development. From a patient perspective, I don't know who would like to comment first. Is it you, Karen, or you, Jean-Philippe?
How? It's a good question. Just to finish the previous discussion, just say, usually, clinician experts are experts of the disease. We, as patients, are the experts of the life with the disease. And the challenge, of course, is to better understand for the whole chain working on the clinical trials, what are the real patient needs. Exactly what you said. Say, what are our needs? What is relevant for me as a patient? You can have a beautiful clinical trial with beautiful results, but if it isn't relevant for me, you will just have a beautiful publication and nothing else. So how to engage patient? Well, there is different level of answers, of course, but first of all, maybe is to organize a national healthcare system sufficient, strong enough to have to be able to have the diagnosis of patient. If you consider, for example, France, we have 3 national rare disease plan. Since 2005, we created a center of references. We have created a global ecosystem of rare disease. And with this ecosystem, it means that every patient, well, this is the goal, every patient should be able to have an access to an expertise not too far of his house and as in the shortest way as possible. So I just mean that if you are not diagnosed, well, you can't be included in a clinical trial because you need to meet an investor, you need an expert team. So first of all, it's to create a strong ecosystem, a robust ecosystem for that. If you don't do that, there is an inequity for patients, and there is no opportunity for them to take part of clinical trials. Well, maybe it's more philosophic, but involving patients, it means living with our disease. It means bringing them together and giving them visibility. And this is what you are doing with this type of round table. And this is what we advocate for through our patient organization. I take the example of the national plan because it's strong, it's powerful. Now we've got some national network for 2017. We've got European reference network, now at the European level, of course. Now we want to implement these reference networks at national level. Just to finish, we need to organize a strong ecosystem from the diagnosis to the treatment. And if we don't do that, well, we miss, of course, an opportunity, strong opportunity for patients because 95% of patients are not treated. But for the industry, for the whole ecosystem, you miss the essential, I think.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, so in my eyes, I mean, from where I stand, well, first, I'm a very practical person. So your question is how to engage with patient organizations. First step, you need to make contact. So you need to find them, you need to talk to them. And what I discover right now, I mean, this is really something of today or yesterday, is that from one disease to another, or from one family of diseases to another, the world is different. So I come from the space of lysosomal storage diseases where the patient organizations are very well structured. And so it's not about where are they, it's just about, well, I need to discuss to all these patient organizations. You don't want to, be unbalanced, and so you need to talk to all of them. In other cases, and that's what I'm starting to discover in my new company, it seems that the world of patient groups is far less structured than what I've seen before in other therapeutic areas. And so my first action here as a CEO is going to be make the contact, identify where the patient groups are. Are there patient groups? If not, I mean specific for the diseases. If not, well, I'm going to go to the higher level, like to umbrella organizations. So not maybe on a group on the specific disease I'm looking at, but maybe the family of diseases. And if not, I will go to the level above. There will always be a national alliance. There will always be Eurordis, NORD in the US. And so my next comment on that would be go and search help from people who know. They will help you engage with patient organizations, and they will also, so that's just, I mean, that's obvious. What I'm saying is that use the expertise of others. And so maybe the last thing I would say on that is that whenever there is interaction, or there are interactions between a company, a private company, I mean, with private investors, or even a public company, but I mean here a company for profit and patient groups. On the other hand, of course, there needs to be a pretty clear framework because we have questions of ethics, we have questions of compliance, and so you need to get into contact, and then you need to set up a healthy frame so that no one is taking advantage of the other, so that it remains something very ethical and very patient-oriented, and so take the or use the experience of others who have done that before and who can help you on an everyday basis.
I would like to build on what you are saying, because I think, I mean, you are raising a super important point. It is, I believe, for a biotech company of great importance to have a strong patient organization as a counterpart. Because in order for the voice of patient to be heard, you need to have an organization and patients who drive that organization who are able to deal with our institutions, who knows how to deal with regulators, with local institutions, with European institutions, and with the right framework, and who knows as well how to deal with companies. And it's not always easy. So having a strong patient organization, and if this is not the case, being able to connect a young patient organization with an umbrella organization or with other patient organizations who have been through that journey before is super helpful. And I know you have been through that journey yourself, Jean-Philippe, so maybe you can as well.
No, that's right. And it's not easy, because if you consider ultra-rare diseases, which are numerous, as you said, it's complicated. It needs a lot of ingredients. And in the ecosystem of our disease, there is a huge heterogeneity between patient organizations. You can find by FM Téléthon, which is a big organization, but mainly, and I've created a patient organization in France 20 years ago, 18 years ago. Well, we are currently a small organization, but of course now we have got a strong knowledge of the ecosystem, a strong network, but it took 18 years. And with few resources, but that's true. What you said, it's true. You need to try to find patient organization. But if they are not existing, well, you can try to find the umbrella. But if the umbrella is not strong enough, sorry, and I'll let you, Nicolas. If the umbrella is not strong enough, maybe you can support the creation of a patient organization as well.
And Nicolas, just before you start, could you comment also on the evolution of the patient engagement with your so broad experience? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can. I hope I can. I will just start. I will not forget your point, but I will. I hope. But I will just start with the patient organization, patient advocacy groups, actually. And the question is not to say it's important. We all know that how major it is and how it will be impossible today. And this is part of your last point. It was possible before not to speak with the patient advocacy group. When I say before, it was 25, 30, 40 years before. And of course, it will not be possible today and imaginable. But what are the needs related to the patient advocacy groups and patient organizations, whatever they are, whatever is their power, okay? Because as Karen said, not all the patient organizations are not AFM Téléthon. And as I said before, most rare diseases are ultra-rare diseases, okay? So it's important to have umbrellas, but still. What we need, I think, I feel, is to involve the patient organizations and the patients facing the R&D structures in our organizations. Because we need all the people, the researchers, the developers, the physicians in our organizations to know better about the disease. So we need to embark according to the compliance rules, of course, legal rules, of course, and they are not light, rather heavy sometimes, but still, it's important to comply with the rules. But still, we need to have testimonies of patients. We need to invite the patients in our organizations to testify, to testimonies. And this is something that is absolutely essential. The second point is about natural history studies. You have many patients organizations which have built registries, databases, cohorts, and we need to rely on the data, so we need to rely on these tools to develop the best molecules as possible. And you even have several examples, I'm sure you know about that. You have patient advocacy groups who have created their own company, their own CRO, just to pick data where they are and deal is a nice word, it's not pejorative at all, and deal with the developers, with the R&D companies to provide them with the best possible natural history data, which are not dispensable if you want to develop. So this is part also of your last point, which is about the evolution of what we were doing with the patient advocacy groups and the patients themselves a couple of years ago, many years ago, and what we are doing now. And it will not be possible to imagine to develop a trial, to build a trial without patients. It's not only a problem of ethics, of course, from the ethical point of view, it is not possible. But even from a practical point of view, it's not possible.
Yes, thank you. And Andrea, actually investing company sitting in the board, you have an important role to play for the patient engagement. Could you comment?
Of course, as investor is completely different. We cannot serve all type of patients and population, although we saw a a lot of deal during the years or the time. So since we cannot engage directly with all the association or patients population, we need to trust the company to do the first step most of the time. This is mandatory. But as investor, it's important for us to try to have an initial relationship with different population, also to understand the need and if there is an opportunity, because as I stated before, it's very important to understand what is the patient need, the market need, and the investment opportunity that we can try to follow in the future. It's not easy. It's not easy because probably we come last after all the others. Also in the preparation of clinical trial, there is always a portfolio company that is working before of us in the direct engagement. But as investor, we can push for that. And it's important to push, otherwise we are not aligned. And if we think that they are not following the proper path, we have to try to steer them in the proper direction. And also, it was mentioned before, there are different type of organizations. Some are clearly more structured, some are less structured. Of course, if you go for cystic fibrosis or other indication like that, you have a huge organization. They know the company. They come to you sometimes potentially for funding, and they could provide additional funding. For other type of indication or rare disease, you have nothing. You probably will not have anything also in the future. It will be very difficult. But in this case, as investor or as a company where we are investing in, we can try to set up a type of organization where you have a key opinion leader and potential patients to try to help the recruiting and the awareness of the disease.
Thank you.
Just wanted to add something about the patient engagement and patient organization. This is precisely one of our role in the Alliance Maladies Rares in France, is to support patient organization to better understand the ecosystem in which they work, to better understand what is a clinical trial, to better understand how can we deal with the regulators. And I think this is precisely when we work with 240 patient organizations with a huge heterogeneity of demand, of needs, but there's many common things on which we can work. So this is also the role of this type of patient organization.
Thank you, Jean-Philippe. Nicolas, I would like to come back to you because you mentioned what is really important in my view also in the pharma industry. C'est really to confront actually even the researchers directly with the patients. And so, according to your experience, when it is appropriate actually to engage with patients, speaking about researchers, but certainly speaking about the clinical development plan of the drug and the natural history of the disease?
I love the question. I love this question because it's something I thought for long when I was in the academic system. And I always considered the researchers in my organization were not only dealing with tubes, plates, mice, whatever. They were all committed for one disease or another disease, and in general for rare diseases. And now I reach the industry. I am in the industry, and I'm more than happy of that because I think that, like many other researchers, physicians in the academic system, I was very pretentious. I thought that there was a kind of excellence in the academic system, and a lot of money. No, I'm of course it's very pejorative and very it's a big trait. I'm saying here, but more or less I thought that there was excellence in the academic system, and most of the excellence was in the academics, which is wrong. I met in the industry the best researchers, the researchers I would have dreamed to hire in my former positions. And they are all committed, but highly committed to treat, to bring the best possible molecules to the patients. Which means that what we are doing in our company is involving the patients not only as early as possible. I will tell you exactly when we decide to pick an indication and a target. When we decide, it means that we did not even make the first meeting, the first committee meeting internally to endorse the project as a concept project. And still, we are thinking about an indication, we are thinking about a target to develop, and we start to talk under confidentiality and under all the compliance and legal rules with the patient advocacy groups. So this is the starting point for me. And then you need to involve the patients in all the steps. I was speaking about patients' needs and endpoints. I need to define what will be the best endpoint in the trial I want to design, I need to make sure that this corresponds to the most prominent patient need. If not, what I'm doing makes no sense. I'm wrong. If I am dealing with a pediatric disorder, for example, and a neurologic pediatric disorder, I want to make sure that the severity of the disorder, which is as it is seen by the parents and caregivers, will be related in the right balance with the acceptability of the administration route. It's extremely difficult to say I will treat all the patients with an intracerebroventricular system or intrathecal injection if the disease is not considered as deserving such an invasive route and reverse. So we really need to understand all the needs, and this starts really when we think about an indication to load. Even if this indication, which has been loaded in our pipeline of research and further in our pipeline of development, finally does not go until the end. We would like all the programs we start to go until the end, but we all know that this cannot be the case in the industry. It's impossible. But when it goes further and further, early stage research, late stage research, early development, etc., we have started to talk to the patients, and I think that we are better placed to know what is the need and how we can adapt our trial and our design to the patient's needs.
Thank you, Nicolas.
Yes, and if I may just add one thing, we need our clinical protocol, right, to design our preclinical studies. So that's where you have to start with the patients, because your clinical protocol will inform your preclinical package, studies, etc.
Sure, very good point. And you, François, at Argenix, are you following the same approach, involving the patient very early?
Yes, so we started very early. So we are just bringing to market our first products, okay? And we actually design our phase 3 based on the feedback of the US Patient Association. And it was at a time where the company had no product on the market, was super small, Belgium-based, no one on the ground in the US. So we went into that direction, even at a stage which were truly in a startup phase for the company. So critical for us and present in everything we do.
And for each indication you are developing, by the way, for
absolutely.
And now from a patient perspective, again here, Karen and Jean-Philippe, when do you, as a patient, do you want to be involved with the biotech and the pharma industry in the development of the rare disease?
That's a very funny question, because I myself am not a patient. And when I started, the first patient group I had, because my child was sick, I wanted to be involved since the beginning. That's why it ended up in a company, and then a listed company with everything like a normal company. So if I'm a patient, I think I want to be here from the beginning. Now I'm a CEO only today. I'm starting. I took up my job like literally a few days ago, and my immediate thoughts are going towards, of course, we need a VP finance. I'm going to the laboratory because I meet with the scientific founders. I meet with the investors, with my team, etc., etc. But on my to-do list, on the first, I mean, there are a few blocks, if I may, and so one of them is patient advocacy, and I've started already looking for a patient advocacy group because, and maybe others, because I won't start without having sit with people who know about the disease, because they live with it, whether it's parents or children. Because so far, what experience do I have of the disease my company is targeting as a lead indication? I have papers, I have publications, I have the scientific founders, words that are important. I have equations, I have biological figures, cartoons, I have KOLs, I have articles, but all this is extremely important, right? I'm not neglecting that, by no means. But now I want to sit with people who know the disease on an everyday basis. What is it? What is it every day? So the very beginning.
Very beginning. And you, Jean-Philippe, what is your vision on that?
I agree as early as possible, because if you consider the protocol design for the reason you explained just before, I think it's important to be close to the reality, the patient reality, because you can have a beautiful design with beautiful results, as we said previously, if it's not relevant for the patient's life, for the patient needs. Well, what for? What is it made for?
Yeah, the sooner the better. And actually, Andrea, I speak about the physician now, not the investor. So what is your vision?
No, also as investor, I could tell, or both. So it's important to engage, of course, early, preclinically. Most of the case, I would say, when you are at the clinic, it's mandatory to have engagement with patients. Preclinically, maybe in case you cannot involve them if you have already comparables. So for more common rare disease, in that case, you already know the endpoint, so it's less mandatory, I would say, to have a patient engagement from that part before starting with regulatory agency. But once you are in clinical trial, and better if you can do it before, it's mandatory, because we know that time is money. So recruitment, if it's quicker, it's better for investor, and it's better for patients, it's better for the future company and for the healthcare system at the end.
And clearly, it's always a challenge.
Excuse me,
The enrollment, yes, Nicolas?
if I may, there is just one point perhaps we did not address here. In rare diseases, in particular in severe rare diseases, you have to be very agile in the design of your studies. You have to consider that when you will face the regulatory authorities, you will have to make absolutely sure that your design fits with the patient's need and with what you have learned from the patients. And you have, in many instances now, you have the possibility to have patients listening sessions to the regulatory authorities in EMA, FDA, and other agencies. And this is extremely important, because this is a big help for us, not because we just want to convince and advance and move on whatever the safety is. It's not the point. We need that the agencies are convinced that the patients have been involved and that they are comfortable with the treatment we propose, with the acceptability of the treatment, with the type of molecule, with the route of administration, and the design of the study in general. Are we planning an escalation dose escalation? And whatever it is, we need they are comfortable with the fact that we have all designed with the patients.
And what you are saying, Nicolas, is true as well at a later stage of the whole access process. Today, in France, patients have a voice and can contribute toward our health technology assessment to provide their opinion on the value of innovations. And this is super helpful.
And you can also involve them when you design your own HTS strategy. So I remember having gone in front of the UNETA, which was a sort of consortium of different health technology assessment bodies back in 2015, with the help of patient groups. And they also had, I mean, the people at UNETA, they also had a patient advocate on their side. And so all the purpose of the discussion, the briefing package, the discussions, etc., the purpose was really to make sure we were both, I mean, HTA bodies and the company, in agreement on what would be the value at the end of the day. And at that very stage, we were still in preclinical design studies, I would say. So thinking of making sure the clinical protocol was okay. What about the HTA dimension of it? And so it was very helpful. I really recommend it.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
We still have less than 2 minutes, so thank you for the discussion so far. I would like you to give actually your conclusion or your take-home message with regard to patient engagement in rare disease, in the clinical development, potentially the preclinical development, to your point. So starting with you.
Okay, no, the take-home message from my side is that investors should be and aligned with patients, with all the others. We are also the same stakeholders, so don't consider us apart, but consider us as a potential resource to move it quicker and faster and with more capital.
Nicolas?
Just a word, I have to pick one, about the future of clinical trials. We did not speak a lot about the digital tools, and I think that digital tools will be absolutely essential, they are already, and they will be absolutely essential to not only to keep the patients adherent in the trials, but to collect data all along the trials and reduce the burden of not only of the disease, but the burden of the clinical trials, which may be sometimes very heavy.
Yeah, the patient-reported outcome, exactly. Karen?
But I think we've said it all, so I hand it over to my neighbor.
Yeah, I can only add to what Nicolas was saying. No, this is about the value of time by engaging early. We give the patient association and the biotech company the ability to generate data in clinical trials, but as well beyond, about what is the actual burden of the disease. And there is a lot of value into it, but you need time, so start early.
Last word for you, Jean-Philippe.
Well, I could say health democracy was a word 20 years ago. Now it's a fact. Patients are present. This roundtable showed that we are here. We can have a voice. We are working together with you as an industry, with the policymakers, the regulators. So I think things progressively are changing, and that's good. If we talk about the future, well, the future starts today. I mean, we are and we need to work together more and more, to be more engaged, to work together. It's a win-win way.
Thank you, definitely with you. So we are at the end of this panel, so I would like you to join me to thank actually all the panelists for the insight. Thank you very much.